Hello, everyone. This week I will be sharing a bonus episode from Patreon, a little teaser of what we have going on over there. The month of May threw me some curveballs, so I got a little behind on my writing and couldn't quite get a new episode ready for today. But next week we will be back in business. Patreon members, please know that I will not be making a habit of this. I know you pay extra for this exclusive bonus content, and I want to respect that and keep it special for you. But there were just some special circumstances that led to this week. Today, I will be sharing the history of the Hollywood sign. It is a really interesting episode. And in it, I mentioned that I've never really had an interest in visiting LA, but I might have to now that I'm on this podcast journey. And I'm happy to announce that I actually will be taking a trip there this winter. And you guys will all, of course, hear all about my travels and the old golden era stomping grounds that I visit. Enjoy this episode about the history of the Hollywood sign, and I'll see you back next week with a brand new episode about a star of the golden age. Hello, bonus listeners. Welcome to a Stars of the Golden Age bonus episode. Today, I will be talking about the iconic Hollywood sign, undeniably the physical embodiment of the remarkable history of Hollywood through the ages. The Hollywood sign has looked over as history has been made, as an empire was built. It shined bright as silent films filled theater seats to see the new entertainment marvel. It was a beacon of hope for the aspiring stars who arrived in town hoping they could be the next big star. It has stood tall and watched drastic change to the landscape of Hollywood through the years. Changes physically, economically, and culturally. The sign has endured storms, abandonment, abuse, and triumph. Hollywood is vastly different from the 1920s, when the land was filled with so much hope and change and excitement. But one thing has remained constant: the Hollywood sign. The Hollywood sign turned 100 last year, and today we will shine a spotlight on the iconic monument. First, though, let's talk a little about the history of Hollywood itself so we can understand how that precise location became the entertainment mecca of the world. When I refer to Hollywood, when anyone refers to Hollywood, I'm referring to the broad sense of the word. The city of Hollywood itself doesn't exactly hold all of the studio lots, glamorous homes, and iconic restaurants and nightclubs. Hollywood is more of a broad description of the area, It refers to a lifestyle, the dream, to the film industry. The magical land that holds all the fame, beauty, prestige, talent, and dreams. The mystical land of make-believe in which if you have made it there, you have made it to the top of the world. There was a time when Hollywood was nothing but a bare frontier land, no different than anywhere else in the West. A lot of farms and people just doing what they had to do to survive and living a simple life. But before that, it was home for centuries of the Gabrielino tribe. They were the indigenous people of the land. About 1.5 million acres of land. But then guess what happened? Other people came in and said, "Wow, this land is really cool. I think I'll take it." It began as a trickle: cowboys, farmers, prospectors, and bandits. Gotta have those bandits. Once word spread eastward at how awesome the land and climate were in the area, that trickle turned into a stream. And before too long, it was a flood of people. And the men responsible for the real estate that would house all of these new people were loving it. A man named Harvey Wilcox was at the front of this real estate gold mine. He completely changed the landscape of this quiet California area in the late 1800s. And his wife Deoda is credited with coming up with the name for this new budding town: Hollywood. The town of Hollywood was similar to many other developed towns in the turn-of-the-century western United States. All was well. Well, I don't think it was well for the native Gabrielinos. But the Wilcoxes and their new residents didn't really care about that. Everything changed, though, in 1907 when a small film company out of Chicago was pushed out of the city due to bad weather and needed to find a new ideal location to finish shooting their film in. And what did they stumble upon? This little town called Hollywood in California. It had the perfect climate for filmmaking. No rain or snow will get in their way like in Chicago. And the landscape was ideal for a wide range of scenery. It was beautiful. Hollywood it would be. And just like that little trickle that quickly turned into a flood with Hollywood's earliest non-native residents, soon other film companies were flooding in to see what all the fuss was about. The first official film studio to set up shop in Hollywood was the Nestor Film Company, which relocated from New Jersey. Within 5 years, there were 15 film studios who called Hollywood their headquarters. Hopeful filmmakers were showing up to town and turning old barns and buildings into makeshift sound stages. Whatever they could grab and transform to turn out silent films and make a few bucks, they were doing. Many of them were running away from one person in particular in New Jersey, which, fun fact, was the original film capital of the U.S., New Jersey was. The man they were running from was Thomas Edison. Edison was trying to sue the pants off of other filmmakers for using equipment based off of his invention, the kinetoscope. From that very first Chicago-based film company that stumbled upon Hollywood in 1907, things happened very quickly, both in Hollywood and just in the film industry in America in general. I mean, imagine how extraordinary of a time that was for the entertainment industry and entertainment consumers. Stage performances were the only form of entertainment, and now people could go to movie houses and watch this magical new medium on the screen. Moving pictures. It must have been such a remarkable transition to experience. And to prove that, by 1920, 40 million Americans were going to the movies each week. The entire population of the U.S. in 1920 was 106 million, and that's all ages, of course. So about 40% of the entire population was turning out to see these new screen marvels every week. And that meant more opportunity for hopeful filmmakers and hopeful stars. People were rushing into Hollywood in droves, hungry for their chance at stardom and wealth. The real estate moguls were having a blast. They couldn't build homes fast enough. Anywhere from quaint bungalows to apartment buildings to hotels to lush mansions. And all of these people needed food and entertainment, so restaurants, bars, and nightclubs had to be built as well. Now we get to the point that we've all been waiting for, the birth of the Hollywood sign. In 1923, Los Angeles Times publisher and real estate developer Harry Chandler was constructing a new upscale housing development called Hollywoodland in the Hollywood Hills. The Hollywood sign wasn't put up there by the city of Hollywood to welcome in visitors and fame chasers. In fact, it didn't even say Hollywood when it was first erected. The massive sign was erected by Harry Chandler as a larger-than-life billboard on the top of Mount Lee at the eastern end of the Santa Monica Mountains, advertising his posh new neighborhood below. He wanted to really showcase his new development and get people talking. And man, did it work. So it was built as just a massive advertisement. It was no small feat getting that humongous marquee built way up in the hills like that. It was a raw, rocky, hilly chunk of land. 200 men were employed, and a bunch of poor mules who, let's be honest, were the real rock stars of the project. 7 miles of road had to be cut in, and 300,000 yards of dirt had to be moved. Now, that kind of unit of measure means nothing to me, so I asked my resident smarty pants guy how much that was. And Mr. C said 300,000 yards is a ton of material. He said the average dump truck holds 10 yards, so that would equal 30,000 dump truck loads. Again, poor mules, they weren't using dump trucks. Each of the 13 letters that spelled out Hollywoodland was constructed of large metal squares that were held together by wires, pipes, scaffolding, and telephone poles. So, how big do you think each letter is? Take a guess. Each of the 13 original letters stood 43 feet tall and 30 feet wide. That is as tall as a 4-story building and almost as wide as the length of a city bus. Each letter. And remember, they didn't have trucks and equipment like we do today, capable of getting all the materials to the top of Mount Lee. It was all done through the back-breaking work of laborers and mules. And each letter was adorned with lights, illuminating the landscape below. The sign was equipped with 4,000 20-watt bulbs spaced 8 inches apart. So I never really found out this part for sure, but they must have had power running up to it. The completed sign illuminated the budding town below. It blinked in succession. First holly, then wood, then land. It was really remarkable in the time before bright lights lit up every inch of every city. This was a sight to see. The sign was a huge deal on the Hollywood landscape. And of course, some people weren't satisfied by simply viewing it from below. They wanted to get up there and experience the amazement of standing up there at the top, a tiny specimen of life overtowered by the massive letters. Actor Harry Neville was one of those people. He wanted to see if he could drive an automobile to the sign. So, with a crowd gathered to watch this awesome feat, Neville hopped in his car, said, "Hold my beer and watch this," and ascended up the steep rocky hillside of Mount Lee. I doubt he actually said that. As reported in the Los Angeles Times on December 30th, 1923, quote, "A motley crowd of hill climbers, workmen, salesmen, and curiosity thrill seekers stood by with fear and trembling as the loose dirt began to give way, but Neville stuck by the ship to make it safely back to the wide, smooth roads of Hollywoodland." The biggest concern was whether or not the old car, I assume a Model T, would have sufficient enough brakes to make it back down safely. Well, he made it, thank goodness. The new Hollywoodland sign was a guiding light and a symbol of hope for all of the hopeful stars arriving in Hollywood after the long trip westward. Many of them were just looking for that chance at stardom. Many were already trained and experienced stage actors from New York looking to capitalize on the new exciting form of entertainment on the silver screen. Some wanted to be the creators of the stories, some wanted to be the faces of the stories. Whatever the motivation, the Hollywoodland sign was the welcoming beacon of hope and opportunity for an exciting life of stardom in the land of movies. Dreams were sadly crushed for many, many people who didn't get that jump onto the silver screen that they had so desperately hoped for when they arrived in town. Especially a few years after the creation of the Hollywoodland sign, when silent films began the exciting transition to talkies. It became a point where some people became overnight stars, and some huge silent film stars became overnight has-beens. There is one tragic story of a young woman who still had her whole life ahead of her, a woman whose dreams of Hollywood fame were crushed. Her name was Peg Entwistle. She had been a successful stage actress in New York, having done at least a dozen productions on Broadway. And in 1932, she decided to make the cross-country journey to Hollywood to hopefully become a screen star. After being in Hollywood for just 4 months, Peg made the decision to end her life. On September 16, 1932, she climbed to the top of Mount Lee, climbed a maintenance ladder to the top of the 43-foot-tall letter H, and jumped to her death. In her purse left behind, she left a note. It read, "I am afraid. I am a coward. I am sorry for everything. If I had done this a long time ago, it would have saved a lot of pain. P.E." Legend has always said that Peg Entwistle's failure to become a movie star was what led to her death. However, we know so much more about mental illness today than was known in 1932. Her note to me clearly illustrates that she was experiencing some mental health struggles that existed long before her arrival in Hollywood 4 months prior to her death. It was a tragic ending to a life that could have given the world so much more. Peg Entwistle was only 24 years old when she died. Peg did appear in one Hollywood film, but she didn't live to see it light up the silver screen. The film was titled 13 Women, produced by David O. Selznick and starring Myrna Loy and Irene Dunne. And this was a great opportunity that I would think would garner a lot of hope to a budding film star. Peg died 1 month before the movie even debuted. The massive Hollywoodland sign, like I said, was merely intended to be a temporary advertisement, and it was planned to be removed after a year and a half once the prestigious Hollywoodland development was completed. The finished cost of this temporary sign was $21,000. That adjusts to about $387,000 today in 2025. The Hollywoodland sign was only illuminated for a decade. It was a big job maintaining those 4,000 lights, and the man for the job was a German immigrant named Albert Koth. He was tasked at replacing any burned-out lights and overall maintenance of the huge structure. I have a terrible fear of heights, so that wouldn't be the job for me, but for some people, that sounds like a pretty sweet gig. Since the sign was only intended to be temporary, it wasn't designed to withstand decades of life in the elements. And the purpose of the sign was a bust. Harry Chandler's upscale housing development wasn't as profitable as he imagined, and the 425 acres of unsold land and the sign landed in the hands of the M.H. Sherman Company in 1933, a decade after it was built. The Hollywood sign was quickly becoming a sad relic of what was once the brightest, welcoming landmark in Tinseltown. While Hollywood itself was booming beyond belief, the sign was crumbling, literally. In 1944, the letter H blew over and it would remain knocked down for 6 years. With no desire to maintain the sign or develop the land, the M.H. Sherman Company sold the property and the sign to the city of Los Angeles for $1 in early 1945. On January 30th, 1945, the land officially became a part of the 3,800-acre Griffith Park, and the Los Angeles City Recreation and Parks Commission would take over responsibility for its maintenance. Well, a couple of years went by, and the city decided they didn't want to be responsible for the dilapidated sign, and they wanted to rid themselves of it. But local residents and the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce weren't ready to say goodbye. A protest began and continued for 2 years until the LA Parks Commission said, "You want it so bad? You can have it." And they granted the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce permission to rebuild the sign to its former glory. It's now 1949, and the Hollywoodland sign is in the hands of the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. Well, the Ollywoodland sign, I should say, because that poor letter H has been knocked down for years now. The first order of business was to get that H back up. Once the H was back in its spot, the L-A-N-D was removed, leaving the sign to say Hollywood. And that's how it remained, still constructed of the materials that were only meant to last 18 months back in 1923, for another additional 20 years until the early 1970s. And at that point, it was clear something had to be done. The sign had been standing for 50 years, and it had been through a lot. It was deteriorating beyond repair at this point. Yet something about this physical sign and remembrance of the history of Hollywood and all it had experienced couldn't be let go. In 1973, it was designated as a historic cultural monument by the Los Angeles Cultural Heritage Board. And now the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce finally decided it was time to go all in and step into action. They couldn't act fast enough. During the 70s, one of the O's and half of the D crumbled and tumbled down Mount Lee. And then an arsonist started the second L on fire. Then, in true 1970s fashion, vandals altered the sign to read Hollyweed. It was not a good decade for the Hollywood sign. The chamber raised $250,000 as part of the Save the Sign campaign in the late 70s. Everyday residents stepped up, and those who were able to give a little extra for the cause were happy to donate. Gene Autry, Alice Cooper, and Hugh Hefner, to name a few of the top supporters. On November 11, 1978, the newly constructed Hollywood sign was unveiled, and the Hollywood Sign Trust was established to oversee the maintenance, repairs, and safety of the sign. And they continue to protect the famous landmark to this day. And they are who I got the majority of this great information from to share with you today. Vandals continued to make their way to the top of Mount Lee and mess with the Hollywood sign. Disputes took place over easements to local access to the sign and significant viewing points. The Hollywood sign has definitely seen its fair share of drama. In 2000, the Trust was able to install a state-of-the-art surveillance system to protect the sign from any further damage. Public access to the sign is strictly prohibited, and the area is monitored 24/7, so don't even think about it. There are a few great viewing points, though. I'll put a link to the hiking trails in my show notes in case you want to check it out. In February of 2010, a campaign began to raise funds to secure additional land surrounding the Hollywood sign to ensure additional safety and protection of the famous landmark. The 9 letters of the sign were covered with temporary canvas signs that read, "Save the Peak," as a physical declaration to everyone in the area of the Trust's desire for help. The sign's biggest fan and supporter, it is said, was Hugh Hefner. In 2010, 7 years before his death, Hefner made a substantial donation to the Trust in order to purchase that land, and whatever he didn't donate himself, he enlisted other uber-wealthy people to pitch in. $12.5 million was raised, and additional land was purchased. In 2012, the Trust partnered up with Sherwin-Williams to give the Hollywood sign a complete makeover in preparation for its 90th birthday the following year. Sherwin-Williams generously donated all of the paint and labor costs to give the bigger-than-life letters a shiny new finish. 10 years later, Sherwin-Williams stepped up to the plate again, and together with the local commercial painting company, Duggan & Associates, the sign was given the facelift she deserves to celebrate her 100th birthday. A full century of iconic symbolism of the Hollywood dream. How much paint did it take each time? Each of the 9 letters took about 44 gallons of paint, with the entire task requiring approximately 400 gallons of white paint, which Sherwin-Williams named Hollywood Centennial White in honor of the sign's centennial birthday. I'm going to share with you right now one of my dream jobs throughout my whole life. I love the jobs I have, but I always thought it would be fun to be the person that comes up with the paint color names. Wouldn't that be fun? I mean, there's some really, really cool paint color names. I would totally do that. Sherwin-Williams, are you listening? Reach out to me. So anyways, there is a super duper cool time-lapse video of the project from the 2012 makeover, showing the crew painting each of the massive letters. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. You should definitely check it out. It's very impressive and super cool to see just how huge those letters are up close and personal. I want to talk a little bit about Griffith Park, which sits just below the Hollywood sign. Now, we're not talking about a little community park here. Griffith Park is 4,200 acres big, which equals about 6.5 square miles. According to the Los Angeles Conservancy, Griffith Park is the largest municipal park with urban wilderness in the entire United States. It's like its own little recreation community. The land was donated to the city of Los Angeles by Colonel Griffith J. Griffith, I know, unfortunate name, and his wife Tina in 1896. The land was donated with the intent, quote, to be used as a public park for the purposes of recreation, health and pleasure, for the use and benefit of inhabitants of the said city of Los Angeles forever, end quote. Griffith added, quote, public parks are a safety valve of great cities and should be accessible and attractive, where neither race, creed, nor color should be excluded, end quote. I love that. Mr. Griffith sounds like a super nice guy, doesn't he? Well, he ended up going to prison in 1903 for shooting his wife. Don't worry, she survived, but she was severely injured. In October of 1933, tragedy struck when a wildfire broke out in the park. 29 men were killed and 150 injured while trying to fight the fire. There were additional fires in 1961, 1971, and 2007. The park went on to have expansions and additions added over the years. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, the CCC camp that was inside of the park was transformed into the Griffith Park Detention Camp, a holding center for Japanese Americans who had been arrested as enemy aliens before they were transferred to internment camps. The detention camp then became a prisoner of war processing center for German, Japanese, and Italian POWs. So a lot of history has occurred inside of Griffith Park, and a lot of it is not so good. Within the park today lies the Los Angeles Zoo, the Autry National Center, an equestrian center, an amphitheater, a merry-go-round, a railroad museum and railway, ample picnic area, the Griffith Observatory, many hiking trails, and, of course, the Hollywood sign. Many compare Griffith Park to New York City's Central Park. Griffith Park has always been the home to location shoots of many, many movies and television shows. The earliest being The Birth of the Nation in 1915, iconic. And other notable films, Rebel Without a Cause, Sunset Boulevard, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, God, I love that movie, and Back to the Future, just to name a few of the many. On the spooky side of things, many believe that Griffith Park is haunted. By who? Well, first of all, Mr. Griffith J. Griffith himself. He was very invested in that chunk of property and very proud to have his name attached to it. There have also been reports of Mr. Walt Disney lingering around the carousel, which was a favorite attraction for his family when his children were young. And, of course, people have reported the presence of Peg Entwistle, the young woman whose life ended when she jumped from the top of the letter H of the Hollywood sign. If you're lucky, it is said, you can get a little whiff of her gardenia perfume. In conclusion, the Hollywood sign has stood tall over Hollywood for 100 years now. Hollywood itself has seen social change, cultural evolution, urban decay, urban renewal, massive changes in the entertainment industry, deaths of legends, entrances of hopefuls who would become legends. When you think of Hollywood, the image that appears in your mind is that iconic Hollywood sign. It's the landmark you just consider has always been there and will always be there. And you seldom consider the turmoil and despair it has experienced and the incredible amount of maintenance and security that goes in to ensure its safety and survival. I've been to a ton of places in this big, beautiful world we live in. But Los Angeles is one place that I have not visited. I'll be honest, I haven't really had the desire to. But as I go through this incredible journey of creating these stories for you, I find myself with a deep desire to take a little trip to LA. I know it's a far cry from the glamorous Hollywood of the Golden Age, but it would be amazing to just be where so much iconic history has taken place. To see the Walk of Fame, to see the handprints at Grauman's Chinese Theater, take a stroll down the Sunset Strip, do a Golden Age tour, and to stand back and admire that large 9-letter monument that was the beacon of hope for so many of our legends. The monument who has stood and seen it all. The story of the Hollywood sign is a reminder to all of us the importance of valuing the preservation of history. Thank you to the Hollywood Sign Trust for your love and care of the Hollywood sign and for your respect of our past and ensurement of the future. I hope to come visit it very soon. And thank you all for listening. I will put up some links in the show notes for the amazing time-lapse video of the painting of the sign, plus a couple of other links for the best hiking trails and other info for visiting the sign. The video of the restoration is really, really cool though, so I encourage you to check that out. My primary source for this episode was the amazing HollywoodSign.org, which is the official preservation site of the Hollywood sign. I also used the Gabrielino Tongva Nation's website, gabrielinoTongva.org, an article from Architectural Digest by Clara Westhoff from July 25th, 2023, an article from the summer 2017 issue of Discover Hollywood magazine, the Los Angeles Conservancy website, an article from LAist by Jillian Morin Perez and Austin Cross from October 30th, 2024, SherwinWilliams.com, and a little from Wikipedia.